Welcome to the Media Conclave. Today we're going to be talking about life, music, and ministry. We have some legends before you, not just Jacksonville. I don't want to limit it to Jacksonville because a few of these guys are worldwide, but they took their roots in Jacksonville. As a result of that, they branched off ministries, music concepts, production companies, etc. And I'm honored to be amongst such greatness. I've had the opportunity to be a student of all of these guys. One guy is missing. I'm going to let you guess who it is. I'm going to let you guess. He's been missing all our life.
Wow.
We're going to call him Eric Carter. And normally he's missing or late. He had to get a haircut, but that hair is gone. But it's a joy, it's an honor to be with these guys. So what we're going to do, we're going to start to my right, your left, and just give an introduction, tell the people who you are.
Oh, Reginald Maurice Dantzler Sr.
What do you do, Reginald? I mean,
What do I do? I do whatever it takes. And I'm going to leave it right there.
Okay, let me add this. Reginald had Dantzler Studios in the city of Jacksonville
I had
for
the
years.
power station recording studio for almost 15, 16 years. 3103 Spring Park Road. That's where it all started. Actually started somewhere before that, but that was the biggest hurdle we had, and that's the biggest. That's pretty much least for everything. That's how I met all these guys here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually how I met all of them.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't in the church. So, I
Yeah.
met you. I met Luke first, Tim, then Roosevelt, then the man himself here. But I met Eric. Actually, I met Eric first.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah, because I came out the road. I gave him everything I had.
Did you really?
That's a true story.
Good stuff.
That's a true story. He'll tell you the truth. Everything I had, I gave to him.
And your studio was jumping before studios became popular. Now.
Well, actually, me and Kenny both had studios.
Ken, yeah.
And then
Ken
Maurice
Andrews.
came along, and then it just started flourishing from there.
Gotcha. Next.
My name is Ernest Davis Jr. I'm a trombone player. I've been playing the trombone since I was 12.
Now I want to say this about Ernest Davis. You know you done made it when you still wear your shades on in the sun, ain't it? That means you famous. Go ahead. All right, Bishop.
Yes, my name is Bruce Allen, and I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois, and migrated to Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm just glad to be among all this greatness just flowing all over me.
Good stuff. John Luke.
Okay, my name is Luke Shumpert, and be quiet, Terrence. And I'm just honored to be here with all of my friends. These guys are my friends, and I just thank God for being here. And I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I lived a lot of places. Well, I lived in Ohio for almost a quarter of my life, but I just thank God for being here and this opportunity. Amen.
My name is Roosevelt Forehand, and I'm from the best side. That's the west side of Jacksonville. From Church of God by Faith, raised, reared, been there all my life. And it's just good to be here with amongst these brothers and friends. And I'm the minister of music there. Been the minister of music
80
there
years
at the
now.
church probably close to 40-some years, close to 50. I'm just trying to play it low. But over 40, over 40 years.
We know,
And,
though.
Just glad to be here amongst these friends.
I'm Tim Jackson, Sr. I'm from Jacksonville. This is home. And I've been knowing these guys for some of them from birth to teenage years, like Roosevelt and Bruce shortly after, and Terrence, my oldest son. And it's just great to have this opportunity to share with a little bit about our past and where we anticipate moving forward.
So I think that the epitome of greatness really resides in the generation that follows you, the generation that comes after you, There's one scripture in the Bible that talks about from generation to generation that they would know the works of God through the previous generation, right? So they gave their, Eric is not here, but they gave their introductions. Now I want to give them an introduction from my perspective, because I'm at least 30, 40 years younger than these guys.
Really?
When they got there, they started their careers. I was in elementary school, but I have a good memory. So I want to start with Reggie. Reggie had one of the largest studios and equipment galore. And whenever we wanted to record as kids, when we were coming up, he opened the door and gave us the opportunity. Myself, Jamie Johnson, Victavian Forehand, which is Roosevelt's son, Alvin. We had a safe haven to go in terms of studio. This is before Mo started his. In fact, Maurice Henderson, was working for Ken.
Ken Andrews, yeah.
He was Ken's understudy at the time. Yeah. But Reggie allowed us to use this studio as a safe haven for us to work on our music and stay out of trouble.
Right. That was my main thing, and I'm glad you said that, because coming from Chicago like I did, I had nobody that I can look to that did what I accomplished here. Because in Chicago, it was just dog eat dog, and that's straight out the streets of Chicago. So when I got here, I came here as a military. Well, I wasn't a military brat, but my daddy made me come here for some serious reasons. I had to get out of Chicago, which I'm glad he did, because I know for a fact I would be dead.
Yeah.
I know. It's without a doubt.
Yeah. You brought some of the residue of that to Jacksonville.
I tried not.
I'm going to put it this way. We just knew we were safe with Uncle Reggie.
Yeah. Well, one thing's for sure. When you came in that studio, nobody was going to follow you in there that wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And, that was actually some great times in my life, because I met a lot of great guys, really.
Yeah.
A lot of young guys that's, I made, and I don't look for credit for none of that stuff. I did it, not knowing why until I met Bishop Robinson later, and I started going to South. So that's when I really started figuring out what my purpose actually was. Because in Chicago, that was not my purpose.
Gotcha.
Nowhere near my purpose, because I wasn't even doing music in Chicago. Music was nowhere in sight. Thugging was in sight.
Yeah.
That's all we knew.
We knew thugging was in sight. My very first experience, Powerhouse Studios, Jamie had given us the invitation. And when we got there, we were sitting in the studio. He was on keyboards. We were going over parts, getting ready to lay some tracks. And I asked Jamie, hey, why all them guns up there on that speaker? Listen, it looked like a Navy base with all the artillery that was in it. But we knew we were safe with you, and we accredit a lot of the sternness, black and white, and safety to you. So we're grateful for you, man.
Hey man, those were like my kids, really.
Yeah.
All of them. His son. First time I met his son, I fell in love with him right out the back, because that was singing. I'm telling you, did the song "Dancing in the Rain." I'm like, walked in, I heard that. I'm like, whoa, who is this? Because I never, like here again, we didn't have a place in Chicago that we can come to that was black owned and operated, where I can see somebody in my same color doing this. In Chicago, if you're on the street and somebody, and I ain't no racist at all, but when white people ride by, all you heard was clink, 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 all they locking the doors. And for good reasons.
I got you.
But that's what we were accustomed. So when I got here, it was a culture shock, really. It was total culture. Well, I didn't come here. I went to Key West first. So you can imagine a young guy out of Chicago, never seen anybody but this color here.
Right.
The only time you ever seen white folks was on TV.
Right.
And this is the truth. Only time I've ever seen them was on TV. So as I'm growing up, they shipped me out of Chicago. In a matter of 24 hours after what happened, they shipped me straight out of there. My feet didn't touch the ground. I was at the airport. You can tell it in my pictures. When I show you the pictures from the airport, you'd be like, yeah, you were pissed. But
I remember I have a brother, Freddie McIntyre, who transitioned, went home to be with the Lord some years ago,
Yeah.
you always looked out for me and Freddie. Always. From the studio to the church, I don't care where we were, you were always looking out.
Well, Freddie came to my house with my godson, Michael McDowell. He came to my house a couple times over there on the north side, off Bunker Hill, I think that's what I live. I can't remember over there near the Edgewood area. And he came over there. Him and Mike came over there and recorded. I had a 16 track in there. They would come in there and sit in the den and record all day long.
We're grateful for your work, man.
Appreciate it.
We're grateful for your work and your service. Now, Ernest Davis,
Yes, sir.
Trumpet player, trombone player. We were kids, of course, when you picked up the trombone. But tell us about a little of your early experiences in Jacksonville. Who'd you play for?
Well, actually, I grew up on the beach. I grew up on Atlantic Beach,
Okay.
and I started playing in the band.
Okay.
And I started playing saxophone first, but trombone is what I really wanted, so I switched off and started playing trombone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and close up, went to Fletcher, graduated from there, and got drafted into the Army, and went to Vietnam.
Gotcha. Yeah, you got to use your mic, old school. Okay, I got you.
And went to Vietnam, and life went through that. I got wounded over there, came back, got well. They sent me back over there, And after that, I was when I got out, I was the first black police officer on the beach. A lot of people don't know that, but I used to be a police officer.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah,
So thank you for your years of service. Thanks who you've been not only to the music community, but to the community at large in the beaches area, and in the city of Jacksonville. We appreciate you. Now I want to talk about Bishop Allen. So we were kids, again, generation to generation. We were younger, much younger than you guys, and we had a different perspective as it relates to our view. We weren't old enough to know the heads of states, the people that were in charge. We knew of them, but we basically named everything after whatever musician was there. So by no means am I trying to be disrespectful with what I'm getting ready to say, but when we were kids, it was Bruce Allen and Abyssinia. We had no concept of who the pastor was, because you got to remember, we were young teenagers, 13, 14. And as a result of that, there was this keyboard player who didn't play the radio, who knew his stuff, who had a flavor that we had never heard, that came to Jacksonville, and he was the minister of music up under Pastor Diamond, and it was Bruce Allen. You were at that time, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, he was the most famous person here outside of Luke and Jimmy Hill. Would y'all say that? Very popular?
I would say that. Because I know he has
Use your
for
mic.
himself.
That's why they
We're
gave it to
sharing
you.
the mic. That's why
Yeah,
they
okay.
didn't give
So
me
when you
one.
get ready to talk, you take that mic.
That's when I think about Bruce. I think when Bruce came to town, we became friends. Bruce raised the level of musicianship, the excellence to another level. We had great musicians here, but the water level, we had to go to another level. Guys had to play correctly because he brought that discipline. Even and it wasn't just people like Tim, drummer. He would always play and lock, but it just all those guys. We can say Carlos, other guys that play. They all knew that they had to take that stuff up to another
Dark
level.
Carlos,
Yeah,
Carlos Williams.
pray for him.
Yeah, man.
That's what
Anyway.
y'all called it.
Anyway, so that's what I think. Thank God, he just changed the whole dynamic
He did.
of musicianship in our city,
And
and
our
not just church.
right. No, you're right. Because as kids, the standard was Bruce Allen. Everybody wanted to play and be like Bruce Allen. There were some kids we accepted not because we really liked them, but just because they studied up under Bruce Allen, like Leonard, PJ, you know, because they were his understudy, we accepted them. I think Leonard was still transposing that. Anyway, so Bruce Allen was the man, and he raised the standard in the city. Now, when it comes to you talking about musicianship is one thing. Then you were also a minister of music. Not the title, but you were literally a minister of music. And you taught classes that challenged us to not only take your music serious, but your walk with God. And the third part I want to add to this, you did something that the city hadn't seen. You had New City Productions, which was a production company. You were recording albums. At the time, that's what we called them.
Yeah.
Albums. Then you had an award show. Y'all remember?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Y'all can jump in at any time while I'm going through this stuff.
Let me clear this up. Let me clear this up. Leonard wasn't transposing because I wouldn't let him transpose.
Well, he tried.
So he was
I'm just
learning
kidding.
how to
Yeah, you're
play
right.
in every key.
You're right.
I ain't even know what a transposer was on the keyboard. I was playing somewhere, and somebody came over, and it was my keyboard now, and they asked me, "Where's your transposer?" And I told them, I said, your guess is just as good as mine. 'Cause I never knew where it was, because I never used it.
I was being facetious with Leonard, but you're right.
Okay,
You're right.
just in case
Yeah.
Leonard is watching.
Just in case. Yeah, he never transposed. But I do remember when he couldn't play him about 2 keys till he left Bruce. Very fluent musician now. Very fluent musician. But I remember in New City Productions, you rented the Florida Theater and would have award shows there. That was something the city had never seen.
Right.
Timmy was the timekeeper. I remember he used to sit on that stool and tell us, your time up, get off stage for when we did the. Am I lying? Am I lying?
I was actually honored to be a part of New City Productions,
We all were.
and it was the hours that we spent together planning, beyond the awards show, just music and production and all of that, and that's one of the things that we can honor Bruce for today, is that he saw something in me as a musician, as a young musician, said, "Come on, Tim," and he brought I was already pretty good,
Right.
but he brought where I was to another level.
We're going to talk about who you were from our perspective in a minute.
Yeah.
But he did do that. The who's who in the city came out for New City Production. This was long before you could get a news anchor to do anything. Bruce had them presenting awards. Pastors, city council, if I'm not mistaken, the sheriff as well as the mayor. If they weren't there, they had representatives there. You took ministry to another level for us, created an award show that didn't just bring the church community together, it brought the city and surrounding areas together.
Wow.
We'll applaud you for your greatness, man.
Yeah. We just had a dream, and
Push your mic up, Bishop.
we saw all of the. I saw all of the talent that we had in Jacksonville, and no one was celebrating the talent. So myself and you all know a very good friend of all of ours that plays bass, Lawrence Buckner. We got together and we had Tim along with us, and we started talking about it. All of these people, Roosevelt, Luke, we had really Ross, and it was a whole
Jimmy Hill.
It was just a whole host of people that were great, and nobody was recognizing them. And so what I said, we may not ever make it to where, you know, we win a Stellar Award or something like that, or you know. So why don't we start an award within our own city to honor our talented people? And so that's kind of how we got started. And I had, you know, a whole lot of people that helped me. You know, I remember Teresa Hodge, you know, helping me, you know, and just many people that I was able to contact. And when I called them, you know, most of them, you know, just responded positively to help us. And so that's how we started that production.
You were ahead of your time. Go ahead, Reggie.
I want to interject some with what he just said, what Bruce just said, because I don't know if you remember or not, you would bring the choir out to like events like the Kuma Festival, and they had another festival that you did. I was running. That's when I was just started in the sound business, but a couple of times, matter of fact, one time I caught fire on you over at the hotel that time. But this is before that. You had your choir out there. It was on the platform stage, and you were playing. I'm like, I had stopped playing then.
Okay.
But I was so amazed at what you were doing. Me and my bass player, Daryl Ruger, was sitting there like, wow, I need to play with him. And that was way back then. I had just stopped playing. But that's one of the reasons and one of the things that had me going, because when I started getting into the Southside Church of God, I started meeting Luke over there, and I met Roosevelt and met Tim over with Vaughn, and I met Terry. I really didn't know Terry's name. I couldn't remember his name, but I always knew your brother's name. You know, Freddie was always there. But that's one of the things that, you know, that impressed me so much about it, because here again, I knew nothing about gospel music or church, period. But when I seen that, you know, like I say, as I made that walk, things kept coming. I met you. I already met them, but wasn't no church in them back then. Yeah.
Well, I was church.
No, you wasn't. No, you wasn't. No, you wasn't. I'm gonna call it like it is.
Okay,
Since we call it like it is, we call it like it is.
All right, go ahead.
But I met Luke and Roosevelt, and it kept going. I already knew. I grew up pretty much with Jimmy. When I moved here, Jimmy was one of the first musicians I met. So me and Jimmy was already tight long before I ever met y'all. When he was playing in clubs, But and man, it was just like I said. That's part of the walk that I was talking about.
It's good, man.
That was part of it.
That's good. So now I want to go to John Luke.
John 3:16.
He was destined to be biblical. He got two first names, John Luke, right out the Bible.
It's okay.
No, but now Luke, for us as kids, we hadn't heard of praise and worship. We hadn't heard that term. It was devotion. That's what we was raised with, devotion.
Right.
The very first time I heard of praise and worship was Luke Shepherd in One Accord. If my memory serves me correctly, we had a lot of singing groups, but we didn't have community choirs. You were the first. One Accord was a community choir. It was a huge choir, but your focus and your aim was praise and worship. And you crossed the tracks. You were able to reach grandmama, mama, and you crossed the lines of ethnicity. Because back in the day now, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, it was either you went to a black church or a white church. There were no mixed churches. Luke, you were the first one that I remember going to a concert and seeing different nationalities there. And I could be wrong now, y'all help me out. From the seat where I was sitting, you brought praise and worship to the black church because we started as kids emulating what you were doing. In fact, I give you this. I was the devotion leader for Willie Ross, New Youth Community Choir. Every time he had, at first it was Willie Ross and Inspiration. When he had anniversaries, concerts, I would lead devotion. But after going to your concerts, sitting up under you and Jacinto, I told Willie we need to change it from devotion to praise and worship. And that's really when it started for our generation. because you had set such a example with all these men and women. You, your sister, Cindy was the greatest singer out. Her and Henrietta Telfair, that's all we wanted to hear. Exie, because you were a trailblazer and laying the foundation for what praise and worship is. Then to be a student, you started inviting us to your workshops. We started getting educated as to our approach to God and to people when we are ministering. And we thank you, man, for your service.
Well, I appreciate that. As you were talking, I was thinking about, a lot of that came from when I was younger. We had a European American brother that would come teach praise and worship, actually to my group, One Accord, and actually that I kind of went and sat under it. But when me and Bishop McLaughlin, we were together, we would travel to Azusa, to Carlton Pearson's conference.
Yeah.
And we took that thing that we had learned and actually grabbed it, and we took it to another level. Tim, I don't know if you remember, we would bring it to Potter's house, well, Word of Faith at the time. But that was always my heartbeat, to be more of a Levitical, I would say.
Yeah.
And to, to have, I don't know if we would even get into the subject today, have the audience participation versus, I wanted quality and wanted everything tight, but I wanted the audience to participate and to get them to understand what, the heart of God is, and going after his heart and massaging the heart of God versus let's put on the show.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea that I tried to bring to because that's what we were taught at that time. And so, and like I said, we would gleam, go see Gary Oliver, Donna McClurkin. They were doing worship.
Yeah.
And then, I said, oh, man, we got to take this back home. And like I said, and had been taught that, I said, oh, man, this is what we're doing. And we had, so we had sort of been doing that, Tim. Even as kids, we would be on our face when we were like 18, 17 years old on the floor in church on Friday nights. Teenagers just, worshiping and praising God and just going after his heart. Amen. So.
And we were Baptists too, Tim.
Yeah, and we were Baptist boys.
So they're bringing up the Baptist stuff because in a conversation we had earlier, the only two people here that was really saved was me and Bishop Allen. We from Church of God in Christ, and we were from an era where we were the only ones going to heaven. Baptist people, we didn't trust y'all because y'all smoke, drink, and now y'all can pray, line of hymn, but y'all cussed. You did whatever you. Now I want to say this too about you, Luke. That during that era, during that time, you also took the time, and you were going to start a youth One Accord. You remember that?
Right.
Me, Freddie, my sister Sean, Renee. You start working with Andrew Jackson High School.
Right.
With Mr. White.
Exactly.
And you were going to start a One Accord Youth.
Right.
So you started investing in us. We appreciate you for that, man.
Well, I just thank God.
Did you remember that before I said it?
As you know, I sort of remember that because I used to try to actually kind of corral you guys around because they were so talented. And I think one of the things that we try to do too was evangelism. Reggie probably don't remember us, but this is so big on my heart when I always think about Reggie. You remember going to the Salvation Army? We used to do stuff like outreach.
Did a lot of outreach. Yeah.
But I remember, forget all other stuff. Reggie said, I want to go to the Salvation Army. You probably don't remember that, Reggie, and I want to be a part of that. And we went there, man, to serve those people and work with them. But and that was kind of more of my heart than, I said, let's get out of the four walls. And let's go to the community. See, Reggie don't remember that. That was so long ago. But
I remember certain parts of it, but, I just was trying to fit in where I can get in where I can fit in.
Yeah, man, but
How would you remember? That's 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Okay, Terry.
Come on, man. No, but you were so intricate in that. But you were so passionate about when we went and when we would do that.
Reggie's always had a heart for people.
Amen.
Period.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, Luke, you're also the one that introduced me, Jamie, Clay, Alvin, Vic. We didn't know them guys. We were 14, 15 years ago, and you used to tell me all the time. You was like, Terrence, I got my little cousins I want you to meet. And you set that meeting up. We end up meeting at Church of God by Faith, and that's how I want to segue to Roosevelt Forehand.
Okay.
You set up a meeting, and we came to a rehearsal. It was a rehearsal, and at the rehearsal, Roosevelt, you were planning to do a recording.
Okay. Bruce produced.
I just, say what, Luke?
Bruce produced it.
You produced that?
Yeah,
Wow.
Bruce was the producer.
Okay, so it was probably a year prior to this recording that I met Jamie, Clay, Vic. There were a couple of other guys. Those are the guys that stick out because we stayed together even now. But we were at Church of God by Faith. We used to love to hear this guy at By Faith up under Pastor Matthews, Daddy Matthews. This guy had so much energy. He could direct, he could sing, and he was real fast. Everything he did fast. And I never forget being in the small church. This was before the big one was built. We were in the small church. And something went wrong in rehearsal. Me, Freddie, Willie Raw, Lamar Sims. We were sitting in the back. Something went wrong in that rehearsal. And you stopped the entire rehearsal. And I screamed laughing. And Corey Johnson. I screamed laughing. You turn around. Hey, you ain't gonna do that here. You ain't gonna do that here. You gave me a strong rebuke. You gave me a strong, and that's how I met you. So Roosevelt, you were an icon as well as these other icons. On the West Side, you had it sold up, you and Luke. But you had it more so too, because Church of God by Faith was that thing. You know what I mean? Now, we always tease that Church of God by Faith was the son of Church of God in Christ. One no other church than the Church of God in Christ. But for what you were, not only to the community, but to that church family, that body, all of the musicians that grew up there, that you mentored. When we talk about some of the younger guys that were coming up, you didn't play the radio with us. You never played with us. You never smiled with us. So every time we got around you, we were afraid of you. But you had a good heart, and you were not scared to rebuke us. And I was saying this earlier, one of my fondest memories of Roosevelt, he had a group, a chorale, and I never forget, they would wear all black. Roosevelt would be the only one with a robe on, the ephod. And it stood out. But we respected you then, we respect you now, because you didn't play with us. You told us the truth, too. You told me several times, stop playing so much, boy. Boy, stop playing so much. One time I got a hold of your nickname, and I would call, I'm not going to call it. I'm not going to call the nickname. I'm just talking about the story. Y'all see what I'm talking about? But I yelled it, and boy, when I tell you that concert was over, you came and got me and laid me out. But we appreciate that, man. You taught us that structure, that discipline, and you stayed on us.
Yeah, man, because back then, I mean, the way I was raised and Church of God by Faith, you know, we took church was serious.
Yeah.
Even as young kids, you know, we didn't do no in and everything in church like some do now.
Yeah.
They told us to respect the church, respect God's place. And I didn't know anything different than to, you know, when it come down to, you know, a lot of times we kid around and play around, and back then I was much younger. And I loved church, and I knew that was a place for worship. I knew that was a place to get in touch and to be in the presence of God, and to come there with a bunch of foolishness, and you know, I just couldn't tolerate that. That's just something I just couldn't tolerate. I didn't, because I mean I rebuked and
did.
so many others.
You did.
But it was
I
a
think you
learning.
made Clay cry one time. Clay was crying. You got on this case, but go ahead.
But I think I got a part of that from June Lundy. I don't know if y'all remember him, but June Lundy was he was over the music. In the first church, not the second church that you know about, the very first church. It was across the street then, very small. And June Lundy was he was over the music, over the choir, and that's where I got my training from, because he did not play at all. And then there was times I was scared of him. But he pushed me. I mean, a lot of things he saw in me that I didn't see in myself. When I started off singing. And then around 12, I started music. The church sent me to music school. It was called Nice House of Music on Park Street. I didn't stay alone. I went for a while, but I didn't stay alone because I felt like I wasn't learning quick enough. So I stopped going, And I wish I would have kept it up, but I didn't. But June Lundy, he just didn't play. And then when it came down to, he put a lot of responsibilities on me because he seen something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Good stuff.
Even when it came down to teaching, singing, and I started playing, well, not playing, but I was on the piano, tapping and doing that there and getting inside the church, teaching myself, just rehearsing, because it was something in me, and I could not quite understand. I understand it better now as I came along, and I wasn't with Luke and Tim.
Because you're older than them, right? You weren't.
Yes, I'm just a tad bit older than Luke.
They were like sons to you,
But I
kind of
tell
like
you,
us?
church, we were just like family, man. It was
Yeah.
like family, and it's always been that way, even when we connected and we got old enough. Because back then, it was a small community.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a whole lot of other things outside. We just the fellowship and the love that we had for one another, man, it was genuine. And so by the time I got to the age where me and Luke and started fellowshipping, man, it was something great, and it's been good ever since. It's never with Luke. I mean, my relationship with him did nothing but grown.
I wanna bring up one of my fondest memories of you. I don't know if y'all remember this, but Willie it was something at Cathedral. I don't remember what it was, but Luke and One Accord came together. You and your choir came together, and your congo player,
You talking
Ken Jefferson's brother,
about
Bernard played the congos, and we were kids, man. We were silly. We giggled then. Everything was funny. And I never forget, you turned around and you, quit playing, boy, in the choir stand. We were in the choir stand. You rebuked me for playing. And Bernard came to me after the service was over. He said, see, he wouldn't be on you like that. If you just got to learn how to tone it down. So Bernard knew how to smooth things over. Knew how to smooth things. That's one of my fondest memories. We thank you for your legacy and your work.
Appreciate it.
What I love about this setting, before we go to Timmy, what I love about this setting is this is really the first time you all been able to hear from our generation in this light, and we get to celebrate you guys, and this is not a going home celebration.
Amen. Thank God.
You get an opportunity to see that we literally grew, learned up under you all, and the things that we're putting our hands to now, it was because we were exposed to the things that you all did way before time. So while it may look new to other people, it wasn't new to us because we saw you all do it. We stand on your shoulders. And I speak for my generation when I say that.
Appreciate that.
That's what a lot of them don't even see.
They don't.
Right now, the generation that's out there now, they don't know how they got here.
How it evolved, that's right.
They don't know what went on before. Because I think I said something in my interview last week about Eugene White.
Yeah, man.
I mean,
Yes.
Jimmy Hill.
Yes, sir.
And Hamp was the organ
Hamp,
player.
yep.
I mean,
Yep.
Johnny B. I mean, I can go on. The list goes
Yep.
on. Teddy Washington.
Sam Sanders.
The
Sanders.
list goes on, man, and they don't know anything about it. All they know about is what's right here. And I just look at them and I try to show them, but sometimes you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But when it's time for them to drink, they'll figure it out.
As I segue to Timmy, I want to talk about Jimmy Hill a little bit. Of course, he's going home to be with the Lord, but we can't do something like this and not mention Jimmy. because Jimmy paid the foundation for so many. Back in the day, when it was Jimmy Hill and the Gospel Creators, y'all remember that?
Oh, yeah.
The quartet group?
Oh, yeah.
They were the baddest quartet group in the city. One of my favorite songs is Heavy Load. Heavy load, Lord. Heavy load, Lord. I got rid of my heavy load. Jimmy had that deep, dark,
Oh, yeah.
clean, rich voice. And they would take us to church, man. Nobody could play that guitar like Jimmy. Nobody. In fact, Eric learned a lot of stuff that he learned from. Can't Eric chord? Does he still do it?
He's okay.
Because Jimmy was teaching him how to chord. Anyway, this is what he get for not being here. I'm gonna roast him.
And he still ain't here.
Jimmy used to rebuke Eric because he couldn't play with a band. He just always wanted to solo. But anyway, that brings us to Timmy. Timmy, when we were coming up, you were the drummer. Eric, all of the drummers wanted to be you. All of them. I'm thinking of one drummer in particular who stayed up under you, carried your bags. He graduated, you promoted him. He started taking your drums down, building them up. Corey Johnson. People don't understand this. Corey sat up under you. You were his first inspiration.
Corey would literally, wherever I played, he would beat me there, unload my drums, set them up. He watched how I did everything, how I tuned, how my approach, how he would even set his drums up, his equipment, how everything was always clean and professional and dusted, and new heads, you know, regularly changed once a month. And they would want to know, like, why do you change your head so much? So you get out of something, you know, what you put into it. And so
Baby George sat up under you too. Go ahead.
yeah, George, a lot of the guys was around.
Luke, what's wrong?
And what was funny?
He did.
What was funny about this day is the reason that we're here is Cedric. And
Yeah, man.
Cedric, I want to honor him for bringing us together.
Yeah, I was
and
I was getting to
honoring
that.
us. You know, this is because in some kind of way we've impacted his life. And I was Cedric's first teacher. His mother, he could have been no more than 4 or 5 years old, asked me to give him lessons. And one of my techniques in teaching, because he would ask, and many of the guys that I would teach would ask, when I would teach drums, they would always see, you know, they would see me somewhere, and I always had this nice set. But when they come to rehearse, to practice, all they would see is a 3-piece. A kick drum, a snare, and a hi-hat. And they would have to graduate to a crash or a ride cymbal. And it could be forever.
I remember you wouldn't let Corey do drum rolls.
Right. Because it was a discipline.
Yeah.
Now that I didn't create that. When you start naming names, and Reggie start naming names, some of these guys that's gone on, the drummer for me was a man named Matt Green. Matt Green taught me how to lock a groove. He would come in a rehearsal sometime. I would be sitting in, and he let me play, and I would have, if I had the drums leaned up against a wall, leaning against a wall, he said if you sit lazy and play lazy, it's gonna come across the same way. So he taught me how to be disciplined. Bass player like Richard Smith, Smitty. Bass player, there was nobody like a Richard Smith during that time, during that era. You know, and of course Jimmy. And Luke, remember, where we got our first real musical influence was a man named Marvin Collins, the church that we grew up at. And he was trained. He could read, and he taught stuff out of the Hawkins, Love Alive 1, Love Alive 2.
Jerry curl too, didn't he?
No, he didn't have a Jerry curl.
Or Afro Jerry curl? Okay, I'm thinking about something.
You weren't even born probably then.
Okay.
But what he would literally do was he would have the book, sheet music, and he trained us how to sing the music correctly. And when you grew up under that, you know, I started off on keyboards because of him. You know, and I grew into drums when one of them kind of Sundays when the drummer was out of town with his family, Bernard Hogg. They went on vacation. And he came, and I happened to sit on the drums, and when he got back, I got good in the summer, and he didn't get back on the drums. So I was blessed, and I was gifted with the circles that I was running. Jimmy Hill, oh, my God.
Jimmy didn't play with that music.
Jimmy was a beast. And so
Jimmy didn't play.
being connected with, and we had a foundation, you know, from New City Productions, with Bruce giving leadership to that. You know, we had a four-piece that was unbelievable. You know, with Bruce and Lawrence Buckner on bass and Jimmy Hill on guitar. I was on drums. And then you got a lot of the guys who you see coming up, they was like a Corey, they was just sitting there, they was watching,
Kids,
and they
man.
was very humble.
Yeah.
Cedric,
Yeah.
they were very humble.
Yeah.
They were humble, and so God allowed us to be able to sow, to be able to answer questions, to be able to spend time with those because of the guys that was before us.
You guys weren't just skillful in your craft. You understood it, but for us, you were Goliaths. You were the celebrities of our day. You know what I mean? When we talk about Luke, Timmy, Roosevelt, Bishop Allen, Reggie, Ernest, we thought of you guys in light of the Clark sisters, the Winans. We saw you all on the same light. We didn't know the difference. For us, it was no difference. And we knew if we were going to do anything, we had to be right coming around you all. Because you all, you made a standard for excellence. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the heritage, the kinship that all of us have. But to be able to sit as a student and watch then, and I want y'all to know something straight up. I'm watching now. I take notes from your life. Some of the things that we discussed prior to coming on. They're things that I call treasures, and I hold them near to my heart because I'm always learning. I don't think you ever arrive. And you guys have been a great example for that. So I want to shout out, there are two other guys I want to shout out. Definitely Jimmy Hill, who went home to be with the Lord, but was a trailblazer. My brother Freddie McIntyre. And there's this other guy. I'm going to see if y'all remember. Do y'all remember Eddie Wesley? Eddie Steele. Eddie could play an organ, man, out of this world. It was the first time I had seen somebody outside of Bishop Allen. Eddie played with one shoe on, one shoe off. Yeah, Bruce would take off both of his shoes.
You saw that. You knew something was going to happen.
It was going down, man. So we have some questions, and there's no order that we're going to do this in. I'm going to ask the question, and you all answer in your own way. You know, try and keep your answers maybe 60 seconds or less. How did you all get started in music? Do y'all remember? Is that so dated that you don't?
Well, I started when I was about 10 years old, and I started. The pastor where I was in East St. Louis, he put out this thing. He said he needed a young musician to play with the young kids. So he said, the first person that learns to play piano, I'm going to give them a $50 bond. A $50 bond.
That's a lot of money back then.
$50 seemed like a whole lot of money to me
was back then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I was doing segregation, right, Bishop?
Boy, this boy. Oh yeah,
You gotta watch it.
So that was what started me.
Gotcha.
That's and I did win the $50.
Did you? Next.
Well, with me, I think I said previously, I started under June Lundy, and the Church of God by Faith, they sent me to school, and
Wow.
I think I was 12, and to be sent to school without me having to pay anything, without my parents having to pay anything, they footed the bill, because the pastor, they saw something in me, and they tried to I guess, getting me to a place where I can, can be the music, learn the music, and
Elder George Matthews was a pastor then, right?
Correct.
And I want everybody to know this is during a time, this stuff that is happening now, this is during a time we didn't hear about a church sending you to school.
Right. Yes.
Shout out to Church of God by Faith.
Trust you
Elder
me.
George Matthews.
Because Church of
senior.
God by Faith, we can. That's a tight. Church of God by Faith was tight.
Shout
It was
out,
tight.
man.
It was
That's
right
big.
though. But I tell you what, and for the church to invest in a musician, because back then we didn't believe in paying musicians anyway.
Right.
You weren't getting no money.
Right.
Because God was gonna bless you at the end.
That's right. Your reward is in heaven. Your reward is in heaven.
Oh yeah, it was in heaven. It was in heaven.
Yeah. Woo.
So it started from there. But having a pastor like Elder George Matthews, who was such a wise man, this man right here, I tell you what, I respect him in so many ways. But he saw something in me as well as June Lundy, and by them allowing me, sending me to school, I was honored.
Wow.
I felt bad after I quit, eventually. Eventually I felt bad after I knew that, if I would have stayed there, I'd probably been much.
So, and I think this is worth mentioning. You've been the minister of music literally at the same church for how long? 70 years?
It's been close to 40-some years. It's 40-some years. I keep saying 40. Every year I say
No,
40.
it's older than that.
It's 40-some, yeah, 40-some years.
No, it's closer to 50.
Okay, well, just 40-some years.
53. Because you became minister of music as a teenager, right?
Around 18.
Around
It was around
18.
17, 18, somewhere around there.
And how old are you now? I'm just doing it. It's an interview. The people doing the math.
I'm in between.
Yes,
30 plus. How you put it, Bruce? You 20?
Bruce said he was what? 43, 25 years. What was it?
I'm celebrating the 23rd anniversary of my 35th birthday.
So does that mean? Does that mean you've been? Say it again.
I'm celebrating the 23rd anniversary of my 35th birthday.
So does that mean you've been 35, 23 years?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Timmy?
The church, my home church, Bethel Baptist, right here in Jacksonville on the west
Sweetwater.
side, Sweetwater.
That's what it was known. It wasn't West Side back
It
then.
was Sweetwater. And it was, that's where we began. Very gifted, very talented family. My God, we had some singers in our family. We can just form a choir. The majority of the choir was our family.
Gotcha.
And I started there singing in the choir. Little kid, growing up singing. And then we had a group, our cousins, a group of males, the boys. Luke was the oldest, 13.
So Luke is older than you?
Yes, we're 3 years apart.
Okay.
So I was 10, and we all sang, and he played guitar at the time. And everybody that was on the instrument was all cousins. Everybody that was behind the microphone were all cousins. And we were the Gospel Lights.
Wow.
A little young quartet group, and we would sing and travel around the South, and we were pretty good for kids. Mm-hmm. And we grew up, and so that's where our beginning started at church. And then, like I said, we had a drummer at the time named Bernard Hawk, who's very gifted family that he comes from. And Bernard, they're originally from Atlanta, and his family, the kids in the family went back to Atlanta for the summer to be with their grandparents for the summer. And I had to get on drums, and I could just keep a little beat. And those 6 weeks that summer went, something just clicked, something just happened. And then I got to where Marvin said, okay, you're going to stay on the drums. And he gave me that chance, and they pushed me. Then people like Smitty came around, Jimmy. I got exposed to Matt Green. A lot of these guys were full-time, and exposed to people like, we heard his name, but we got to remember he's living. Mr. Gene White,
yeah,
Pastor White.
Yeah,
He is talking about, don't use the word legend with me when you got people like a Gene White.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so and I learned so much from him. You know, we traveled all over the place. He trusted me on drums for a lot of stuff that he did, and you don't realize what kind of a old school jazz musician he is and what he knows. And so he taught me a lot about standards as relates to jazz standards and playing. So people like him. And that's where I got my start, and I was exposed to a lot of different people, like like we mentioned Bruce, and Bruce opened up a lot of doors for me. You know, he opened up a lot of doors and got me on the stage with some major artists, and got me playing on a lot. I mean, I got to as a teenager, I probably did over 15 projects as a teenager playing, because for some reason there wasn't a whole lot of drummers in the church scene. But I was the one getting the phone calls, and I was blessed for that.
It wasn't like it is now.
Right.
There's 1,000 drummers per church now, but back then, you're right, it was rare. I wanna talk about something a little more personal. But Reggie, when did you get started in music? You and Ernest. Ernest, you're next.
Actually, I started in Chicago. I used to live in the projects at 730 39th Street, apartment 303, in the Darrell homes in Chicago. And my mother used to
That
be
was the hood.
Yeah, very
The
much
hood
the
of
hood.
hoods.
I used to look out. I can go on my porch and look at the Sears Tower every day.
So for people that are from Jacksonville, just imagine something more rough than the Blodgett homes.
No, the
Back in the
Blodgett
day.
homes, they ain't close.
So you were at the top of the state, and I was at the bottom of the state.
Yeah, you was in St. Louis.
I didn't even know you were from Illinois to the day.
Wow.
Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois.
Wow.
Cook County Hospital. But what was taking place is my mother used to be an entertainer, and her group, the dance sets, they used to perform all over the place, and they would always rehearse at the house. So I'd have people like Marshall from the Shy Lights and the Artistics, all them guys used to rehearse in our house. I don't know why, but I know why now, because my mother had a bunch of female friends, and they would all be in there, and I'd be sitting there watching while they rehearse. And I'd sit there, they put the record on, I'd sit there and just look at the record for hours and never touch it. My uncle used to tell me that all the time. So you look at that record and would not touch it, and if it stopped, you make us put it back on. But what the amazing thing was, there was a lady, I used to go to, it's a Catholic school not far from my house. And I used to go to the Catholic, Holy Angels Catholic Church is what it was. I used to go there. I don't know, but it was rough. But anyway, this one teacher, she would dress in, with the Catholic gown and everything on, and she would come and get me out of class every day. And I used to wonder why this lady would come get me. But she would come get me, and she would take me way up in this bell tower at the church, and she would have this box guitar, and she'd say, "Play it." I'm not playing no guitar, lady. But before, I think maybe about 3 or 4 sessions with her, it was on from that point.
Wow.
But I actually played conga drums because my uncle played. So with watching all that, and then when my mother and them, when they drummers didn't play, like Tim said something about the drummer not coming up, they drummer didn't show up, me and my cousin Michael, and he was younger than me, we would sit behind the curtain, and they'd have these conga drums lined up, and you would not tell the difference that the drummers wasn't there.
Awesome. Ernest,
Oh, well, I
you
kind
have
of
a
started.
microphone. Use your mic.
Yeah, it started with me at the elementary school that I was going at, and it was 144 Jacksonville Beach,
Okay.
and it went up to first to ninth grade, and then you had to go to Douglas Anderson.
Gotcha.
And they started a band for the first year when I was in ninth grade. They started it. And we were in the band. And like I said, I started playing saxophone first. And then I switched and started playing trombone. But that's where it got started. And after school, we learned real quick. After school, some of the players we got together, and we just started playing. Any song that we heard, we would just learn that song, and we would just jam out with it, And then one day somebody said, "Y'all need to get a bass guitar, and a lead guitar player." And one of the trumpet players, he switched off and started playing bass guitar. And we went and found somebody to play lead, and that's what it started playing. So we started playing on the basses and different places, and everybody just got better
Good stuff,
with
man.
it. Yeah. Mhm.
Good stuff. I want to throw out some other. I call them legends. I believe they're legends. Bishop Lee Alfred Thomas. When we were small coming up, that dude, and he still can. But you're talking about can sing.
Absolutely.
Whoo! Shut down a many churches. So shout out to Bishop Lee Alfred Thomas. Gotta show love to Willie Ross, the late great Willie Ross. In fact, Willie used to sing with one accord. Am I right in that? And then he went on to start Inspiration, then New Youth. So shout out to them as well. I want to ask something. Being a musician, and you guys are fathers, there's a whole nother generation of musicians that are coming, that are here, doing their thing in great ways. Christopher Stafford. I remember Chris when, he wasn't big enough to spell bass. Now he's doing his thing. Rick Benjamin. I probably Doogie. Back in the day, Atlas. Atlas was down in Deerfield Beach. Javon and Jimmy. Name some more. AJ. Name some more of these young guys. Clay Benjamin and Jamie Johnson. Victavian Forehand. Corey Johnson. Singers and musicians alike. Alex Hill. Cedric Matthews. Everybody knows Ced for engineering sound and stuff now. But they don't know Cedric was a drummer.
Right.
Now, I don't know when this sound stuff started. But he was a drummer. And I remember him learning. I remember Ced played for me one time, him and Davon. And I stopped him. Davon, you stop playing, and Cedric, you stop playing. I'm going to do it a cappella because I don't like your tempo. But you guys are responsible for this generation that's up and coming. And one of the things that I'm seeing with this generation is there's a lack of fatherhood. I believe that's one of the things that's a contributing factor to this independence. Everybody's got to do their own thing. There's no unity. It's like me, my own. And we didn't have that with y'all. If there was beef with you all, we didn't know about it because you all did everything together. What would you tell this generation of musicians as it relates to recording, producing, being a faithful musician? What would you tell this generation? What do you believe the key to success? What do you believe the key to that is, being a successful musician, producer in this generation?
Well, I think, first of all, is the musician understanding, the gifting, that God has given them. And, because that tends to always create problems between a musician because I'm comparing what I do to what
That's
you
good,
do.
Bishop.
And that was one of the great things about meeting Luke, meeting Roosevelt, and other musicians. It wasn't about what you can do. It was about
What we could do.
do.
That's good.
And
That's
so I think understanding who you are, because I and not being intimidated by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You've been able to walk in what you do and stand prayerful, and then, as the young people say, staying hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Always, and that's one thing, I've watched Reggie, Reggie from afar off. He just always has this drive.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
drive to do things.
Yeah.
This drive. He just always, and so he just built that. And so if I think if you understand who you are, don't be intimidated by other people, but invite them in, and then have that drive, that Reggie has, and you will be successful.
So, Bishop, one of the two things you said, and I want everybody else to comment on these two things. The first thing you said is stay in your lane, basically. You don't have to compete with anybody else. You're the master of your own lane. Nobody can do you, be you, but you, right? And then the second thing, you were talking about unity. You all were not looking at, so y'all didn't compete against each other. That's good, man. Because we competed.
Because we didn't. I mean, Luke would have something. I would be there. Roosevelt would have something. Me and Luke would be there. We just supported one another.
Wow.
And that's just how we did things.
Yeah, the other part about it is, even with meeting all of them, I never knew how powerful they actually was. I didn't know until I met Luke and started going around. Even with the studio situation, I don't know if y'all remember back when somebody broke in Ken's studio. Y'all know about that? They stole everything in his building. He was devastated. But I offered him, I said, Ken, come get anything you want from over here, and you keep moving.
Wow.
Don't worry about me. I'm all right. But I'm saying they don't do that now. When I know a couple of studios that was vandalized, burned down, nobody offered nobody. Nothing.
So you all looked out for each other.
Yeah. I did Roosevelt.
From the
I did a
heart.
couple projects for Roosevelt. A couple of them. Would have done something for Luke, but Luke, I couldn't keep up with you.
Luke
You
was
here
busy.
one day, you go on the next. But even today, if they want to do projects today, I'm with it. I mean, I offered up my building right now to them because I know them, and I know their character. And like I say, even with Young said right there, I don't have any issue. Whatever he wants, if I got
good.
it, he got it, and he knows that I ain't got to say it. If he make it even better, he got keys to my buildings.
So we have a few more questions we're going to get through. And some I just think the world needs to hear this stuff. Tell me, how did you all balance life, family, and music, and ministry? How did you all balance that? Because in our generation now, that's the struggle. We have to work. We don't have the option. I believe that you all had, because as technology grows, so there's opportunities. So we spread ourselves multiple places trying to get that cheese. You know what I'm saying? How did you all balance that?
I think if you understand order and under who's the gift giver and why you do what you do, that helps. If you notice that if you put God first and you honor God, if you live a life, if that's your lifestyle is a lifestyle that honors Him, that you live for Him, a lifestyle of worship, your music, what you play, and that's the order. And if you're married, then there's your wife, your household, and how you serve in ministry. And if you have an order to your life, when obstacles come, it's easy to draw back to what is important. Mm-hmm. I think when you honor, if your life is to honor God, and a lot of times with musicians, we can be so, we can be so dollar conscious. Roosevelt can call me to do something, anybody in this room, and guys that are not in this room, in churches and choirs, it wasn't about, they knew that you had to have X amount of dollars to get them to come and support you. I was blessed. We were blessed. They blessed us with something, but that wasn't the meaning for me going there. And I think we got a big gig mentality that's coming to the church. When you have a gig mentality, then things can kind of get cloudy. That what is your purpose? Take a look at your purpose. And I think that's where we come in this generation, to open ourselves up to in a level of transparency and be able to say, this is where I was back then. I transitioned from playing, as y'all know, a long time ago, because God called me in another place of ministry. And I put down sticks and I picked up a microphone. And so that's different to where I am now, but still I understand and I see and I work with musicians and work with choirs and ministries and pastors. So I think if we can understand that, if we can help a lot of the guys understand the gig mentality versus the service mentality. You're serving, a ministry, and God always seems to provide for you. And he'll do that, and we're all in this room are witnesses to that. And just the balance between, pastors that are over ministries understand the importance of honoring, these musicians that they have, how to honor them, how to show them that you appreciate them, and do something for them to honor them, with their time and their efforts and stuff like that.
So I have 6 more questions that we need to get through. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to assign the questions to certain people. Before I go through that, I want to take 2 minutes because I think you opened something up just then. I want to take about 2 or 3 minutes and just kind of pause and talk about this for a second. I was raised, you don't serve for money, period. You serve because God has blessed you to be a blessing to other people. That mentality also got me raped. And when I say rape, I mean financially, wherein you serve the local church, you're at the local church. I was a young man, I was married at the time. And what I want to kind of open up, and Bishop, I really want to hear a lot from you. I want to hear everybody, but you're probably the only one here who's been a minister of music, senior pastor, now bishop, and you can cover a wide. How do you, because one of the things that I see in this generation is that these guys are money conscious because they don't want to be taken advantage of. They have families to feed. You have pastors who have a new car every year. They're living on a high hill. This minister of music, musician, you're paying them enough to keep them, and they're going to work enough so they don't get fired. But it's really not enough to take care of their family. So what they're having to do is take different gigs and try and manage this one because the money is not there. How do we manage ministry and money? And when I say ministry and money, you hired this musician to do what they do, but they need just as much ministry as the people in the congregation. And I think so many times when these musicians are hired, they're the ones really that get the worst end of the stick because they don't get any ministry. Nobody's pouring into them. Nobody's ministering to them. And I've heard pastors say, I give you a check, that's your ministry. How do we balance this?
I think that there's time management, there's relational management, relationship management, and for me, I've had a struggle with that over the years, and so I believe that from the musician's point of view, the musician has to take into account what it is that he's called to do, and then he has to make a decision on whether or not he's going to work full time in the church, or or work a part time in the church, receiving his income, because I'm talking about
Right.
income, and then work somewhere outside of the church. Now, some musicians have decided they're going to do music. So, and they take the bars or whatever off of what style of music I'm going to do. So that's why we got, people playing in the church on Sunday, playing in the clubs on Saturday night, doing, so and I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. I'm saying you have to put a balance check in everything, because if you're playing so many places, and even if it's all gospel that you're doing, and then when it comes, Sunday morning or whatever, you're so beat up, you can't, you can't give your best, then you need to rethink that.
That's good.
And then on the other side of it, if the musician is married, then you got to think about your responsibility as a husband. Because most musicians, like I once said, tell their wives, well, you knew I was a musician before I married you. Yeah, I was, but you married. Right. And so that says leave and cleave. So that means that I have to make time, the proper time, to be able to develop that relationship and take care of the things that I'm supposed to, and not only bring in an income, but lend myself to the duties and responsibilities that I'm supposed to oversee.
So I want to say this, Bishop, and I want you to answer this question. What I heard you just say then is that there is an order. Timmy brought it up earlier. There's an order to it. And you're also saying that, okay, the money that you make being a musician, that's not the whole thing, the complete thing. That's a portion of it. So what is the order for a musician? What is the order?
This is me. My other colleagues may see it differently, but I see God first. My wife is next. My family, my wife and family is next. Then comes, what you do. So, your responsibility as a musician or as a pastor, or, whatever it is. So God, family, then work or income. And it has to stay in that order. And a lot of times it gets out of that order, but we have to work to keep it in the correct order, because it can easily get out of order.
Gotcha. We have a question that came in. You want to say something, Luke?
Yeah, let me just say, and I don't want to sound real controversial and seem like I'm getting ready to blast pastors, because one thing, I have a heart for pastors and a heart for ministry.
Right.
I remember one particular instance in my life. I was offered a job, six-figure job, moved to another city, and the pastor said, man, if you stick here with me, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to really pay you really good. I'm going like, okay, I'm making this here right now. And so I came, went, I did the interview, wonderful ministry, came back home, and things got worse. but and that church grew, everything elevated. But I stayed at that point, and sometimes even at this age right now, many times I say, "Oh man, I'm gonna." I shared this with Tim before. How can I do my retirement stuff? How's this stuff gonna work? Because I've sacrificed so much for the ministry, and I've seen the pastors flourish, and and know I'm doing ministry, selling out, and and it's almost like entertain my folk and make sure you're drawing them in the house, bringing them in, and at the end of the day, you're there. And I look at a lot of young musicians, you're there and you're like in a stuck place, because especially when you get up in age and years. There was a pastor told me, I won't name his name, one of Tim's pastors. He said, "Man, there's a place that we have to do when it comes to the church to learn to honor those in ministry when they get a certain age, to be, and pay them even as mentors."
Yeah.
Okay, because and then even when you look at the world and the way they do it, because church now, you got to be honest, it's corporate, and they look at it with a corporate view, and so many leaders and stuff, they're going to make sure they're okay, but a lot of times the musicians are lost, so that's why they go looking for the other gigs and stuff like that, and trying to make extra money. But then the musicians are there, they're hurting, and so.
I want to say this, and then we have a question from online, and then I want to get with Reggie. One of the things I want to say is I think that there are stages in life and there are stages of ministry. In the early embryonic stages, time is on my side. So I can sow to a ministry and not charge them.
Right.
As I progress and get older, which means I have more responsibility, which means I also have more experience and more wisdom from the lifetime of work that I put in, I'm not at the same place that I used to be. So wherein I would do it free then, I'm not working for you full-time free anymore. I'm past that stage of my life. And I do not believe that God requires us to repeat seasons. In that season of learning, that season of coming up, God was using me to sow seed in the house of God. Now, I'm a senior in this. I'm skilled at this. I have wisdom for this. I've learned. I have lifetime scars. I am not required to go back and give you the sacrifice that I gave in my youth. So what has to happen for the church, I think there's an equal responsibility between the musician and the church. The church has to acknowledge your tenure. Y'all been doing this too long to be playing free for anybody. It's an insult for me to call you and not have the finances there to bless you. You shouldn't have to say no. If I'm calling Bishop Allen, Luke, Roosevelt, Timmy, Ernest, Reggie, if I'm calling you, I respect your skill. So my finances should match your skill level. And if it does not, we need to have a conversation. It's a disrespect to call these people who have served, labored, and been in ministry all these years for them to work fee for the sake of the kingdom. No, you got another school that can do that. When you bring me in, your money needs to be together. The business needs to be together. And I know you're not hurting because I see what you drive. Reggie?
Oh, I just wanted to address something. I mean, Tim started out on it. You talked about it. The levels. What if, and I'm just speaking for some of the musicians out there like me who never had that level, who never had that gospel or that church in you. I was born up, never knew what the church was, and I'm just gonna be real about it. It's me and there's a whole bunch of others out here, and I don't know about down here, but from where I'm from, and that's probably why I love the song that Anthony Hamilton sings, "Where I Come From." We never seen church. Mm-hmm. Nobody never took us to church. Only time I knew about a church is when I had to go to I lived in the Darrell homes, and to get the screens for our building, we had to go through the IDB Wells, which is not far from, we had to go through that, which is all gang territory. So we had to maneuver our way through there. Many days I got cuts to prove it. Matter of fact, this one down my face is one of them. But, we had to go there, and it was like maybe 10 blocks away. But on the way back, I would hear music in this building. It was like a big gymnasium building. Mm-hmm. And I hear drums and singing. I would go in there, look around, and I'd go all the way upstairs in the top. Didn't know what a balcony was during that time. I just know it was I'd call it the roof. But I would go all the way up there, listen to the music. They'd be tambourines going, bass guitar, drums playing, and I like it. Still never knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And when the preacher come up to preach, I leave. And I did that for
So when the preacher got up to preach, you left.
Yeah. I just was there for the music. Yeah. That's what drew me in, the music.
I got you.
So I'm just saying, for those of us who didn't have that structure,
That's good.
you
That's
know,
good.
there's a whole nother side to this situation that, you know, I don't know if they're able to discuss it. I'm not even able to discuss it because I'm just telling you what I experienced as a young guy. And I'm talking about 7, 8, 9 years old. And I did that for probably at least 4 or 5 weeks. And I was starting to be called the Pied Piper because all the kids in the neighborhood was following me. Because I would tell them, you know, about the music, what I heard and where the building was. And they would follow me there, and we didn't go to get the screens, none of that kind of stuff. We just went there, didn't know it was a
For the
church.
music.
Nobody never told us about a church.
So can I say this? I think as a leader,
Yes.
pastor, whatever, before you can make a judgment against somebody, you have to understand their background, where they come from.
Right.
Now, the music God used as a tool of evangelism to bring you in, and you had influence in your neighborhood, they were coming in. I've seen pastors rebuke people for leaving after the music is over. But in his case, it was a tool of evangelism. I don't think he should have been rebuked for that. He's working on what he knows. So I think it puts pressure on leadership to understand who's serving with them, who's around them, and the background of the people that are coming in.
But Terry, what I didn't understand as I look back on it, when I tell people the story, because they don't believe me when I tell them.
Mm-hmm.
We did that for almost 2 months. Nobody never asked us who we was.
Wow.
Nobody ever came and spoke to us.
Wow.
You see, you know, I can see you see 1 or 2 kids, but now you see 8, 9, 10 kids coming there, and we go in the same spot every time, and we sit up there and wait. As soon as the music stops, we out. They never asked us our name, where we come from, never greeted us at all. I'm just saying, this is where I came from.
Wow.
So there's a whole different mentality, you know, from where these guys came from.
Yeah.
And I can respect that. I wish I had been taught or taken to a church, you know, or nobody never took time with none of us.
That's good. And to see that these, your brothers, have been that example, and I want to say God used them.
Well, I learned watching them. That's
Wow.
I mean, when I first went to
Powerful, man.
Southside, I started learning immediately because, like he said, when he came in my studio, that's what you seen. Like you said, when you came in there, there's no telling what artillery you were going to see.
Let me get to this question from our online audience. Cachet Wells says, Cachet, you know who you are, Miss Wells. She says, how do you encourage this generation of musicians to walk in their gifting and not forfeit it by getting distracted by world vices? Also want to send a shout out to Brittany Westcott, who's a fabulous singer, anointed, gifted. The city, the church, and the world owes her, and you're going to get yours in the days to come, Brittany. Shout out to you. But how do you encourage this generation of musicians to walk in their gifting and not forfeit it by getting distracted by worldly vices?
Mentorship.
It's good.
And it's got to be the right one.
You have a mic.
You got musicians, just like we did. There was a level of mentorship that we have that really needs to go to another level. I've had guys over the years to ask me would I be their mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to take a real hard look at myself and understanding the accountability that comes along with being someone's mentor. If I'm going to mentor you, there's a level of transparency that you've got to see in me in order to see just how real I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things that I never give a quick answer to. And I would just pray and seek God about, is this somebody that I need to connect with like that? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest things that we are lacking in our in African American culture, in our families, and also in the church. I think with a lot of these guys that we have out here, a lot of us are connected to so many of them. And the ones that I'm connected with and the ones that I know in different ways, they have a great level of respect and honor for you, and they'll listen to you. But I think this is a good time and a place to begin really pushing that, how we can actually help these guys. Because growing up, there was a level of accountability that I had with these group of guys that it wasn't anything that they can say to me and my feelings would be hurt and be insulted because you knew that the care that they had for you. But just like Reggie said, I think one of the number one thing is mentorship.
Roosevelt?
I definitely agree with what Tim said and also with Reggie. First of all, sometime as a leader, sometimes we don't quite understand leadership, and sometimes you don't want to be in that leadership position. In order to be able to mentor somebody, you got to have that leadership mentality in you. You got to be at a place where you can mentor someone. And a lot of times we as musicians or as people, we don't want to be in that place because everything is on you. All the eyes on you. It's almost like you got to walk a straight line. You can't make it. And sometimes you don't want to be in that place because you don't want to be the cause of someone failing or someone falling. So sometimes we kind of hold back and don't really allow ourselves to be in the place where God wants us to be. With these brothers here, I've learned to, as coming along, just respect. I respect Luke, Bruce. I respect Reggie. Once I had a certain amount of respect for them.
Yeah.
I recognize what they brought to the table.
That's good, brother.
I never, ever was jealous. Never, ever. I enjoyed watching other people being able to work in their craft. You know what I mean?
Good, man.
It's like I was able to pick up certain things that can help me along the way. With Reggie, he was always the type of person for me, always business-like, and like had a heart to do whatever it took. When it came down to equipment and came down to engineering, he gave his all. I remember this time with him, and I'm going to say this, Patrick. I did a concert at my church, Building 2, and I asked Reggie to do the sound. Reggie did the sound for me, and the amount that he charged me is unbelievable. I know if I really would have, had a company come in, they would have probably charged me thousands of dollars. This man right here, because I knew it's hard. He knew I didn't have the kind of money that he deserved. But this man right here, he spared no. He came there. Matter of fact, I think it was too much equipment. I think if the fire department came, they probably say they probably shut us down. Yeah. But this man brought all kind of. It was sounds. He had so much, and I'm gonna say this here. I only gave him $300. Wow. That man took that check from me, $300. That's all I gave him. That's all he asked, $300. And when you find people who hard, man, he loved what he did. He loved. And that's why God probably been so good to him. He don't quite understand everything. Same thing with Bruce Allen, a man of his magnitude. When I got connected with him, man, I felt his heart, man. We never competed. I saw what he did, and I loved it, man. It's like it inspired me to want to do more or to want to be more. Same thing with Luke. Luke was such a great teacher. Teaching music, man, he great. And the relationship that we had, man, it was unbelievable. We never competed. We respect each other in their calling, in their gift. And whatever Bruce was lacking in, whatever Luke, I had something that they didn't have. Luke had something that I didn't have. Same thing, Red. It was so we was able to bring that together to connect and link to strengthen that bond. So when we went forth, man, we gave it our all, and that's one thing I respect about these guys, man. Never, not a jealous bone in my body ever. And Bruce Allen, I thought he was one of the best musicians in the world for me. Yeah. I'm just saying for me, man. I had never seen nothing like that. But the man was so humble. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, how can you play like that? And you know,
Yeah.
he just too humble, man. He was just like he was too humble. But that's one thing I loved about it. But
No, thanks, Roosevelt. We have another question from our online audience. The young man, Lonnie Gay, asked the question, why is there so much separation between the OGs and the younger musicians?
I can answer that one.
What you gonna say?
I'll come after you.
Lack of honor.
Oh,
Get around the head.
oh.
Yeah, it's a lack of honor with younger guys, and when it comes to the older guys.
When
a
you,
lack
when you
of
say
honor.
honor, Luke, unpack that for me.
Okay, see, one thing that you notice, Tim, we're sitting there recognizing Pastor White, Eugene White, Marvin Collins, Nathaniel Huff, guys, because we know where we came from.
Yeah.
And we would honor those guys.
Yeah.
See, honor draws the best out. Dishonor pushes down. And if you understand where you came from,
That's good.
and to honor that, you understand where you're going, because it's reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you reap what you sow. You give honor, you'll reap honor.
That's good.
And so,
That's good.
Well, I'm going to just piggyback off of what Luke just said. And I know a lot of these guys. They all call me uncle, but it's only a few of them that, that I would say are close to me. The rest of them that I see don't have any, how would I put this without, well, I'm going to be Reggie, I'm going to be me. They don't have no scruples about what they do or what they say. They say one thing and do another. Yeah. They'll say, okay, well, they have no willing to build nothing.
Mm.
I mean, like the old people say, it takes a village to raise a kid. Mm-hmm. It took more than just my mother, which I didn't have a father. It took more than just my mother to raise me. We had neighbors all in the whole building. So my mother would take this child in, that child in. But nowadays, they have no respect at all to me. They say one thing and do another. And I'm going to speak directly to Mr. Gay. The question you ask, think about it. And once you think about it, you'll have your own answer. And you won't have to send that answer. We won't have to answer it for you.
I want to say, no, Bishop, did you have something?
I was gonna just piggyback off of everything that everybody said. One thing I've noticed about young musicians, they can come. I'm gonna use this as an example, and they can learn from you. You can teach them, and until they get something. And talking about honor, and when they think they got it, they leave away, and they forget all about you, and forget about where they got that from, and so that's a part of that honor that Luke is talking about, because for some reason, like Reggie said, it's just a disconnect in their mind. I mean, they think, I don't know what exactly what they think, but
Can I say one situation?
Yeah, go ahead, Reggie.
And this is for all of us that's here. We're all on the same accord. And I'm not gonna call the names, but please I'm not trying to take over your interview or nothing like that. There was a thing came across Facebook, and it said, looking for musicians, blah 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 blah. At the end of it, it says young. What difference does it make whether you're young or old? If you can do the job or get the job done,
Was that
what's
a
the
church?
difference? No, it wasn't a church.
It was just a,
And we all know the people.
okay.
We all close to them. And I'm not calling no names because I don't want to put nobody on Front Street, which I will, but I'm not going to do that.
Thank you.
But
Thank you, Uncle.
I just didn't, I was insulted by it. And so were some other people that I know that I talked about, because it bothered me. Because and I'm going to say, we helped raise.
So let me, I want to hear, Luke, I want to hear you. I do want to say this. I've never dishonored those that went before me. ever. Even on radio. Now, I don't know if y'all listen to my show or not, but I gave y'all props because I honor you and I respect you. But there is going to Lonnie's question, one of the things is era. There's an era where you guys ran the show, right? Well, as time changed, so does the sound. So does technology. And I can't speak fully for this generation and what they're talking about, but I'll say this. As time changed, the sound changed, and you're still operating in 2020 like you did in 1995, that's going to cause a disconnect from me because you're so accustomed of doing it this way. Technology has changed. One of the problems or one of the issues that the Church of Jesus Christ faced during this pandemic is that I don't care how you were doing church. If you're going to do it now, you need to know how to get online. There were so many pastors who were just oblivious as to how to even go on Facebook on your cell phone. And they had to call these tech guys, these kids, to get them online. And I think the disconnect is both ways. I don't think it's just honor. I think that's definitely a part of it. I think the younger generation is dishonored by the old, and I think the older generation is discounted by the young. Where I come from, we were taught, first of all, we couldn't call you by your first name. That's the first thing. Secondly, there was a level of respect that you got from us just because you were adults. Then you were called by God, right? But at some time, the old school got to know when to pass that baton. The new school got to wait for the baton. And because the new school is getting tired of waiting, you're starting your own thing, but God's not going to honor it because you didn't serve long enough. There's, throughout Scripture, it's always the passing of the torch. It's not the creating a new one. But I think what causes the rift is Dad want to hold on to the baton, and he's literally killing this generation because they can't relate to what y'all did in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Who the oldest? Reggie, you are? Okay, the 50s, 60s. They can't. They can't relate.
I didn't know I was older than this.
Roosevelt.
I think it's a balance of honor. Daddy, you can't hold that baton so long till you kill the church and run everybody off and then hand it to me to try to rebuild it. Give it to me when it's high so we can transcend. One of the things that I honor so much, and I think in this city, when it comes to ministry, who's mirrored that was Dad, Bishop McKissick Sr. and Bishop McKissick Jr. Senior didn't bring Junior in after the church had died. He brought him in while it was alive. It was jumping. It was popping. He didn't put him in charge, but Junior served as a consultant to Senior. Bishop Junior served as a consultant to Senior, and then later, Bishop Senior passed the baton to Bishop Junior. And I think that's in structure and in principle. That's what should be done in every area.
And one thing I was going to say, when I mentioned the honor thing again, honor is back and forth. I have two sons that are musicians, and one of the things I do all the time when I do music, because I want to stay relevant. Right. I don't care if I'm 80 years old, I want to be relevant. Right. And so if I'm writing and producing or doing something, I say, hey man, what do you think about this? How do you think? I'll just consult with them, and even other younger musicians. I just had VJ did a hot, have a really nice song. I said, hey,
shout
VJ.
out to VJ.
Yeah, VJ is a beast, y'all.
He
I got to
is.
give him some props.
VJ
Anyway,
is a beast.
And I said, hey man, how do you feel the song should go? I did it, had my choir sing it, and I believe the production he did on it took the thing to another level. So if we understand, we do honor them and want to hear from our young musicians, and it takes a humility to come back and say, okay, I have a son that's a beast of a bass player. I can't tell that boy nothing. I love you, JB. Okay. And I was in a rehearsal, and I'm not, this is real. I was in a rehearsal, and I'm telling you, the church was packed. Preparing for a concert. And I said, okay, the bass line goes like this. It's my song. And so, and he said, no, Daddy, we need, in front of the whole choir. He said, no, it need to go like this. I said, what did I just say? The whole choir went like, ooh. You can hear something come over the audience.
Yeah.
So there has to be an honoring
Yeah.
in this sense to say, hey, Daddy, can I show you? I think, But, and that's a lot of times we have musicians that way that are just that cocky. And again, and so it's the humility on my part to say, I'm willing to learn and willing to, understand how things should go. But there's a humility on the other younger musicians' part to say, okay, teach me.
Using that example, I would say the way that I would do it is play what they tell me, sing what they tell me, then in private, let's have a discussion.
Well, typically that's where rehearsals come in at, when you're able to do those things. And one of the things, staying right there, Terrence, is when you take a look at, and I've gotten phone calls and communications here over the last few months to the last few years about musicians, the younger musicians, that are not really vibing with the guys in their age group. It's like in our city, you have like now versus when we were all going together, 25, 30, almost 40 years ago, we were a unit, and it wasn't as many of us. So now you've got probably 5 good solid bass players, 6. Same with keys or more keyboard players. And you got guys that's playing multiple instruments now. And so they seem to have a problem getting on the same page or vibing together, communicating together, just blending together.
They're like gangs now.
Use your mic, Luke. They can't hear you without your mic, brother.
Sorry, they're like gangs now. It's like I got my crew over here. And that's even like that in other cities, too. Living up north, I noticed the same thing. If you had a crew, they stick together. And it's almost, like, they don't even include each other on other gigs like we used to do, Reggie.
So what can guys, like moving forward, what can guys in our generation do moving forward to help? And to be honest now, this was a cry for help, Terrence. They called me and they asked me would I support them coming together and just having a venue or a session where we can just talk, something more than a shared jam session. Right. Just so where we can talk and just kind of mend some things and come together and what we can do to bring a healing and moving forward. And I say one of the things that will help is when you take guys like in my age group, like in your dad's age group, that's been doing this for a while and still actively involved in music and ministry, what we can do to set a precedence to move on to help our sons. I have a 25-year-old son that's a musician. And so it was like when I transitioned, he wasn't even thinking about an instrument.
Right.
So when I think about stuff like that.
So I want to add to what you're saying. One of the things that I've done is I pull on you guys, but I also pull on them, the younger generation. Serving here locally, I never forget we were in rehearsal getting ready to, I forget whatever the song was, but I had an idea that the song should go this way. Before I opened it up to the choir as a team, I think it was Chris Stafford, Cedric, Doogie. I pull them to the side. I say, hey, I think I'm going to teach it this way. This is because I met with the musicians before I met with the choir. I want this song to go this way. And then I said, what do you think? Because in my opinion, they're more in touch than I am to a certain extent. And then I have what I like. Now till I die, it's going to be Marvin Winans. So in doing that, I never forget staff. Chris is the one that told me. He said, "No, that is corny," and he laughed. And we were able to work it out. They took a little bit of what I said, mixed it to what they do, and we were able to come up with a very beautiful piece. So I think it still takes humility on both sides. On the older generation,
Absolutely.
have to be humble enough to hear. The younger generation has to be humble enough to hear.
Right.
Both sides has to listen, and this stuff should be done in private. Because the one thing I won't do, and I say this to the young generation, a lot of times, and I've seen this, you young folk put the older generation on the spot. What you're doing is now my defense is up. You're challenging me in front of the people I lead. What you're not going to do is make a fool out of me. So now we're going to have a chest beating contest, and I'm going to win because I'm the authority. So I shut you down, but I wasn't trying to be mean. I was trying to maintain order corporately. So there are private conversations that need to be had before we get public so that respect can stay intact. Would y'all agree? Or y'all,
Yep, I agree.
y'all gonna leave me out here by
No,
myself or y'all?
Don't leave you out by yourself.
Okay.
Not at all.
We have another question from our online audience. This is from my nephew, one of my favorite drummers. What if the new school is waiting and not ready? That's
Get ready. How do you get ready? You continue to practice. You continue to serve wherever you are, and but you've got to be ready. You know, it's like when you take a look at sports. You know, they may have a quarterback, and maybe 3 deep. Most professional teams carry 2 or 3 quarterbacks. All it takes is one play for the starting quarterback to get hurt. And, you know, it's no excuse. You got to be able to go in there and be able to perform, to be able to go in and be able to do it. So prepare, get ready.
And the word in the Bible, it says play skillfully.
Mm-hmm.
We got to understand what the word skillfully means.
Talk.
In the Hebrew, that word means dedicated. Skillfully, dedicated doesn't mean you got all the riffs. I've seen great musicians come in, they don't know how to play with the group. They don't, they overplay.
That's
and
good,
stuff.
man.
So the word skillful, think about it, it's dedicated to what you do, dedicated to God. And so just like Tim was saying, in that time of waiting, stay there and be dedicated to your craft, your gift, and get your heart dedicated to God to do what you're going to do.
I think about musicians. Let me go back to Corey. Perfect example. You know, all of us have musicians that kind of stick
Corey
out.
still wear bell-bottom jeans too, but go ahead.
Let me go back to Corey. Corey was one of those guys that, for all of us, he was somebody who watched.
Mm-hmm.
And Corey, as we all know now, Corey is more than a drummer today.
Producer.
He is a very good producer, good keyboard player. But he was somebody who watched all of us. He wasn't just, so he met me wherever I was going to be, and he watched what I did. He would sit in rehearsals, and he would watch, and he would always respect and honor everybody in this room that he worked with. So, and it was reciprocal. He got it back. He was respected and honored as one of those young guys. So that's where we find ourselves with these guys today. You and Corey around the same age, Terrence, in the same kind of era. But
yeah, he's like 4 years younger than me.
Corey is one of those guys that I think about that paid a dues. We've all paid our dues.
That's right.
So he paid a dues in practicing, preparing, and he's one of those guys that, that a lot of the younger guys not even connected to a Corey. You see somebody like a Javon Hill.
Yeah, I was going to say Javon with his dad.
And with his dad,
Javon,
I mean,
the way he served his dad.
we saw how the Hills served their dad. We would be on the road sometime, and we be lighting Jimmy up. Jimmy would get on the phone and call and check on the boys, see how they doing. And it was like, check on his wife, see how they doing. And they had a routine. They come home,
Practice.
they would do their homework, go outside and play for about an hour, and the rest of the day was rehearsal.
Yes, sir.
And so we see the results of that now when we take a look at these guys. It was a sacrifice that they made. So the young man who had that last question, while you're waiting your turn, your opportunity, prepare. So it's a lot of examples of that.
There's one thing I'd like to say about that.
Okay.
In some situations, they have to just jump in. You got to just jump in because sometimes they don't know when to get in. I'm listening to everybody talk. I had a swimming pool company,
Use your mic.
and I used to brought in a lot of young
This means put the
kids,
mic to your mic.
to teach them. And if they were sitting, just waiting, trying to learn the trade, if they didn't just jump in, they wouldn't have got in.
So he's talking about seizing the moment, not being so timid and shy, where you prepare so much that you let opportunity pass you by. A lot of times people don't know what you have till you show them. So you got to know when to step in, when to jump in, seize the moment, right?
Exactly.
Good.
So sometimes they need to just jump in there.
Good. So I have another question. There are two questions I want to read real quick. One is, why do you feel younger musicians do not give the honor or respect to older musicians? In a nutshell, here's why I really believe. I think some of you younger guys, you're too anxious to have your own and you're not willing to wait. I believe you lack in some areas. It's a lack of maturity, but it is also a lack of meekness and humility. You don't want to be told nothing because you're gifted and you're excited and you have zeal, but you don't have the knowledge and you got to wait your time. And let me say this, God has blessed me not because I'm good. God has blessed me because I serve well. I think you have to have a servant's heart, servant's mentality. I've never challenged anybody that's over me publicly. Now, if you ask me my opinion, I will give it to you gracefully, publicly. But privately, we take our hats off. But I've never dishonored any leader that I have as it relates to them, their title, their position, whether I agree with them or not. There's times, man, I've been so frustrated, hurt, but I'm not going to dishonor those that are over me. So young people, I think that's one of the things. And the second part of the question, is it because they feel as if their gifts and talents are superior? Yes. Some of you young folk, you think your gift is the latest thing and God didn't create nothing but what he gave you. Yes. And you're arrogant. There's no humility. There's no meekness. You have to learn how to take your gift and sit it at the feet of the people who can take you to the next level. You might be better than them as it relates to your gift, but they done seen some days and been through some stuff that you haven't. So they have tenure and wisdom over your gift and talent. Y'all want to say anything to that?
Yeah, I do.
I just agree. I concur.
Okay.
I do, because I've even with the audio company, I've trained many.
Yeah.
Even with the Funk Festival, the Soul Food Festival, Zora, every major festival that there is, my guys have went and set up stages, but they didn't learn that on their own. They learned that through working with me. But here recently, I've had some situations that came up where I've had some younger guys, and my hat is still off to them, that they thought that they could take what I've built and run it better than me.
Ooh.
So my question to them, it never came about, but they didn't even know how to present it to me. Instead of presenting it to me, they took it somewhere else, and then. But the result is, if you're gonna come in and say that you can run something better than the person that built it, you sure better have your act together when you come, because
good.
now you get your butt tore up.
That's good.
And then now you got a personal problem, and it's nothing personal.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I can say about this young man here, and I'm gonna point to him, I ain't gonna say nothing, but.
I'll call his name Cedric.
Yeah, but when he came in the fold, people wonder why I got behind him. When he was, I guess 9 years old, helping me at Church of God by Faith Convention at the Prime Osborne. I don't know if you remember that, Roosevelt. Okay, and even from there, even when I came to his church to help with his daddy, he was right there with me. I called him one day. I had to go do something. I mean, I was actually booked two different places at the same time. He didn't know it, but I called him. I said, Cedric, I need you to come down to Metro Park. I need you to mix this show, the whole show. He didn't know what the whole show meant. That means from sun up to sundown. But he came and did it and learned from it. I mean, I put him on I think that was a Midas console, 48-channel Midas console. I don't know how many boxes we had aside up there when I just bought that line array system. He came out there and did it. Didn't complain. Didn't bother me about nothing later on. But where he is now, all you got, like say, be patient. Wait your turn.
Do your time, man.
Now, he's
your
got
time.
access to everything in that warehouse.
Do your there are no shortcuts to success. There are no shortcuts to the anointing. If you want to be anointed, you're going to have to die. If you're going to be successful, it's going to take time. And some of these young guys are so divisive. They go behind your back, try and take your contract because they got an opportunity. You can't do that, because what you do, you not only lose the business and the brotherhood with those that can help you, but you also bring a curse on your life, because God ain't going to touch you. The Bible says that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. You think you're so much better. That's pride.
And I think also the attitude.
That's good.
I noticed, like, with a lot of the young guys that came in my circle, like a lot of the musicians that have gone on and they're very great, like Clay Benjamin,
Yeah.
Rick Benjamin,
Yeah.
Said, Jonathan, Jamie, all these, they was reared up around me.
Yeah.
I recognize all of them talents, all their gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a leader, sometimes as leaders, sometimes we don't want to push a person or make help mold and make a person, because sometimes you think they might be better than you or greater than you. It's not about that. You know what I mean? It's never been that way with me. I've always tried to push musicians I recognize a gift or talent in them, especially in Church of God by Faith, and the guys that was real around me.
Mm-hmm.
Like was said, I started him off. He was always around the drums. You know, he always wanted to play. It was more than just him. It was some that was a little older. And for his time and when you're going to play, by him being as patient as he was patient, God knows. And he served whatever he can do to help with the drums, whatever little things he can do. You see all that, and I saw part of that in him. So I started him playing on a Wednesday night, not the main service on Sunday, as we call it, but I started him off on Wednesday, playing in the place of Bernard Jefferson. Bernard Jefferson was the main drummer at the time, but I started him playing. I started DeMarne, all those guys right there, Rick Benjamin, although they play bass and all that, but I gave them opportunity. I didn't just sit back and let their gifts or their talent just disappear, fall back. No, I reckon those guys had gifts, and so as a leader, I had to get behind them and give them opportunity. I mean, even with the singers, people that are around, even with Brittany. She came to me before she went to Douglas Anderson, and I had private rehearsals with her before she went over there. She got accepted.
That was Brittany Westcott.
I mean, what did I say, Brittany?
Yeah, no, you said Brittany.
Okay, yeah.
I'm clarifying.
Brittany's
it for the
Westcott,
online
yes.
audience. Yeah.
Yes, my goddaughter there. Okay. But I had private rehearsals with her before she got accepted at Douglas Anderson. And now, the rest of history. But the thing about it, you have to recognize as a leader, I guess it depends on who you're around, the people that like with Lou, he give all the guys that are in his area, around him, he gave him opportunity, gave him a chance. He recognized, he didn't just sit back and, but at the same time, you have to learn to have the right attitude. Some of the musicians have the attitude is just,
good.
It's terrible.
That's good.
That's right.
They don't want to. They don't have patience. They don't want to wait. They feel like it's got to be just the
Overnight
instant,
success.
overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we put in some time, shed some tears, cried.
That's good, man.
So when you do come forth, there's a certain anointing on your life, man, that no one can take away from you.
Yes.
Because you have suffered, you have walked down a path, and you have failed, you have stumbled, and God still picked you up in the midst of all of that. So, that's why we're still standing. And I give them opportunity. I've always give these guys opportunity. The ones that play with me now around me, I try to push them forth. It's like I want to go ahead, do your thing.
It's time.
I ain't trying to hold them back. You like said, I just